Welcome back, day 3. If you wouldn't mind, so folks, this link up here on the screen is for the evaluation. There's been a lot of footwork and planning that's gone into this summit, and we want to ask if you wouldn't mind, please scan this code and help us make this better going forward, and to just account for your feedback here, please. So just take a second. We really rely on input from you all to make this as good as possible. So scan the QR code. It really helps us out. We'll leave this up here for a couple minutes here as we're getting started. And then I also wanted to make an announcement. If anyone's been doing the photo or taking photos, photo bingo, there was a game in the agenda there where you could take photos and send them to us. It turns out the QR code for that is not working for the photo bingo. So if you could email any photos to Michael Robinson at live.com. That's Mikel Robinson at live.com if you have photos, or you can just tap anyone with a planning committee banner under their name tag, and we'd really like to get those photos from you. It's always nice to have a record and document all the good relationship building and things that have been happening. So we got the QR code here for the evaluation, and then if you took photos, we would love to get those from you. So you can email those photos to Michael Robinson, Mikel Robinson at live.com, or just tap anyone with a planning committee banner, and we'll gladly get those photos from you. All right, yeah, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Gabe Kohler. I work with the Forest Stewards Guild. We're based out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're a nationwide forestry organization. And I've had the pleasure of being a part of the planning committee for this event, working with so many folks out here in the room to support all of the peer learning, learning from each other. And getting to know one another, all the relationship building that this conference represents. And we've been having, a summit annually in New Mexico for quite a while now, supported by New Mexico BLM. Shout out to all the folks that have helped fund and make that happen over the years. And I've got to see firsthand, the benefit of events like this in helping us not reinvent the wheel, helping us kind of share information about what's working and what's maybe not working so well and how we can kind of grow and learn from that. And then also just events like this and how they help us get to know one another. I mean, we all know the value of having the right connection, knowing someone's, cell phone number or email address, and being able to get work done more effectively because you have those personal connections and those professional relationships. And I see so many folks out in the hall, and I heard you all out in the streets last night yelling. I think that was maybe maybe that was the other student. But I've been seeing folks out and about. Maybe that wasn't you all. Maybe some of you though. I don't know. Or the folks that didn't make it back. But yeah, there's been a lot of good connections, and I see that, and I think that's really a big part of the value of these types of things, is for us to get to know each other and have those professional relationships. So, so I just want to thank you all for kind of rounding out. We're heading into the final day here. We started strong. We were strong in the middle, and now we have to finish strong. It's going to be strong all the way through here on this final day. So thanks for making it. I want to give a round of applause for each and every one of you for making it out. I know it's been a long year, so thank you for being here. And I want to give a special thanks to a couple folks. I want to thank KP Maxwell for all the footwork and planning and attention to detail on the field tour yesterday. Let's hear it for KP. Thank you. And then finally to Juan for all the work with the audio visual and all the support on tech. Could really appreciate that, Juan. Thank you. And then, of course, our team with AZ WUI, the Arizona Wildfire Initiative, and Full Scope Events. So let's hear it one more time. And so, as we head into the final day here, I know many of you are coming off of fire season. Some of you are coming off of conferences and, annual reports and everything in between, heading into the holidays, which has sometimes its own set of stressors or whatever. I want to thank you for showing up and for kind of giving this final day, your attention and being a part of this together. So thanks for being here. And I want to also kind of suggest a challenge a little bit that, this time as we're heading into a bit of a break here, we're going into holidays, and then after the new year, in my experience working with the guild and being in this work, there are some seasonal patterns that I've seen. And one thing that I notice is that this time after the new year it's often when we're doing our strategic planning. It's often when we're thinking about work plans for the next year. It's often when I have a chance to finally get on the phone with someone who's, in a field-based position where they're out, running around in the spring, summer, and fall. So this time from, kind of after the new year in January into basically beginning of March can be a really good time for us all to take what we learned at this summit and plug it in. Where does it fit in your strategic plan for 2025? Who did you connect with or learn from at this summit that you can get on the phone or get coffee with during that time when it's quieter in that seasonal, fluctuation of this work? And so I want to challenge us all to take that opportunity in that quiet time, after the new year, when we're kind of looking ahead at the spring, summer, and fall, when a lot of this natural resource work happens, build this in and kind of use some of what we learned in this summit to make our work better and to kind of, integrate that into our planning for the next year. And so, that's my challenge for you all, is to just not let it end here with, good relationships and good times, but also, build it into our plan going forward. And then I want to just also share that this isn't end here. There's conversations. We want to continue continue talking about how to keep things like this going forward in some form. And we want to, work with you all on that. And so again, please fill out the evaluation. That really helps, in whatever form that you can, giving some input back to this so that we can make it reflect your, interests and make it valuable. That really helps. So here's the evaluation link, just one more time, if you wouldn't mind filling that out. And I think with that, I want to pass it back to our team here. We have a Holger Durre coming up next with kind of some closing thoughts, or kind of, opening thoughts for our closing day is a better way to put it. And so with that, I'll pass it off to Holger. Thank you.
All right, I move around, so I apologize. Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, before I get started, I just want to thank the committee again that organized this conference. Already extraordinarily successful, and it's so awesome to see everybody in the room. So to get started, my name is Holger Durre. I'm the fire chief in Prescott, Arizona, and the question that I have for the room this morning is, how do you solve a problem that seems completely unsolvable? Well, let's go there for a second. Many of you may have heard the analogy that if you get bumped into and somebody forces you to spill a cup of coffee, how can you prevent that from happening, and what's at fault? And the punchline of that story is basically, well, it all depends on what's in your cup. Because if coffee wasn't in your cup, that's not what it would have spilled, right? Well, the lesson in that, I think, for all of us here over the last couple of days and definitely moving ahead, and the encouragement that I want to give all of us as we move into this seemingly unsolvable problem. Many of you are facing things that are complex, they're underfunded, there aren't any regulations, there seem to be no connections between things, is exactly this. Put something different in our cup. In order for us to be able to move forward in this space and think about these issues differently, exactly what we were just talking about is so important. It is, first of all, innovation. We know that, but let's talk about that a little bit more. It's not just innovation for innovation's sake. It's truly innovation driven for outcomes. It's the idea of what target are we trying to achieve with that innovation. You know, it's very nice sometimes to get into conceptual conversations in terms of how could we potentially solve a problem. But if that exercise in and of itself does not have an outcome in mind at the end, that innovation and that conversation tends to get lost. So the first thing that I would say is, as you're thinking about filling that cup that hopefully will spill over into that problem, make it something that gets followed up on. So if you had a conversation during this conference that, you know, really engaged you and said, man, wouldn't it be cool if, follow that up and put some metrics to it. Get some outcomes into your thinking that say, okay, this innovation truly is something that we're going to be able to apply and move forward. Speaking of outcomes, data, right? Here's another thing we know we need to put in our cup, and many of us have been doing that for decades, and I'm not implying that we're not doing well there. But what I am saying is this. Probably the first thing that you want to figure out when you're lost in the woods is stop, right? It's to figure out where we're at. Data is such a great way for us to assess where we're currently at. Sizing up the problem in a real way is so important. In this work particularly, it is so vitally important for us, in my opinion, to look at metrics that we may have not thought of before. A lot of us in this room, myself included, come from the government world. The government world has their very specific lanes. We know exactly what we're talking about. We have specific regulations that we have to live up to. We have mandates from our elected officials. And that tends to put us in these little buckets. And that also then sometimes prevents us from seeing maybe data sets that we wouldn't have normally thought about figuring out where we're at. And I'm sure that if you're not in the government industry in this room, you have a similar issue, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? We have our biases. And so in essence, what I'm saying is, in order to put something different in your cup, we have to challenge those biases every once in a while so that we can actually look and see data that maybe we hadn't thought about sizing up the problem. Because if we don't do that, obviously, when we figure out where we've come in terms of our progress, if we're not looking at the right data set, you know, we're not having the problem go away and we're wondering what's going on. So the last thing, and probably the most important thing that I want to focus on this morning, is this. And that is seeing the joy in the obstacle. For us in Prescott, we are having, just like many of you, vexing problems between the insurance industry, between wildland urban interface codes, between regulations that were written 30 years ago, perhaps with some of that lack of data and that lack of thought process in mind. And we're trying to apply those things into a current context, and we're not getting anywhere, seemingly. Now, I would actually contend that we are getting really far, because here we are, for one, having this conversation as a state, at a state level. But there's microcosms of exactly what this work is happening across the state. But what I'm getting at here is this. In order for us to really lean into what is happening here, we have to really find the joy in that frustration. I'm sure there's many of you that are thinking about, on a daily basis, my goodness, how do I even wrap my arms around this? Many of you have met our wildfire risk manager, Conrad Jackson. I know that that is something that is on his mind every day. We have phone calls on a daily basis from homeowners that are frustrated with insurance cancellations. We have issues in terms of not having enough workforce to be able to handle many of the grant and mitigation projects that are out there that we would love to engage on, but we simply just don't have enough people, enough framework, enough time. I've heard just in the few, I came last night, and just in the 12 hours that I've been here and the little conversations that I've had with folks, there's such a commonality. And the reason why I say frustration is because of exactly that. I see excitement, number one. I see excitement from people that are in this space that have never been in this space before. That's pretty neat if you think about it. Especially, again, going back to us government folks, us fire folk, we are tribal, right? We have our own language, we have our own way of dressing, we have our own mannerisms, we have all these things, right, that put us into these boxes, and suddenly we have other people knocking on our door that even 3-5 years ago weren't even talking about wildfire. And suddenly they're sitting at our tables, they're sitting at our conferences, and they're building relationships with us. So that's, first of all, one unique thing. The other thing that I hear, of course, like I mentioned, between that excitement, is this absolute curiosity. What if? I've heard the term what if in my work with the Wildfire Initiative over the last year and a half. I've heard the term what if, like I said, even in the 12 hours that I've been down here. And I have a feeling that all of you have had that what if thought, that what if conversation at a dinner table, presented in one of the presentations that you've attended. And in that what if, right, that is, in my opinion, where this energy is going to come from. In order for us to overcome this seemingly difficult place to get that flywheel moving, we're going to have to get that excitement going out of that what if. Because at the end of the day, that cup has got to be full. This is a big problem. This is a huge problem. You know, it is absolutely vital for us. And I'm going to talk specifically about my community in Prescott, Arizona. It is vital for us to solve this challenge. We don't have an option to phone this one in. This is one of these things that we have got to figure out a way, not just when it's politically convenient, to be able to get ahead of. And we can't just get into a spot where, because we are able to solve, I know I'm going to say something here that maybe you're going to start laughing, but get ready. Maybe we solve this insurance problem. I know, comedian. And it goes away, right? That's not how this is going to work out, right? We know we have got to have this very long-term, sustainable, never-ceasing way of figuring out how we adapt to living in a wildfire-impacted world. We had a great conversation with a developer. Yes, a great conversation with a developer, I mean that, just a few weeks ago about the Wildland Interface Code in Prescott, Arizona. We're coming up on a new code adoption cycle. And in that conversation, the question was asked, well, why does the Wildland Interface Code apply to this particular part of town? Now, in this room, I know that I'm looking at a bunch of people that are going, well, duh, because you're in Prescott, Arizona. But even in Prescott, Arizona, right, well, if there's not a ponderosa pine tree standing right next to, my property or my development, how is that wildland interface? And I always say, if you're west of the Mississippi, you're basically in the WUI. Kansas may be excluded just a little bit. If you're from Kansas, I apologize. But you get my point. What I'm getting at here is this. We don't have the ability to sit this one out. And so with that, what I would encourage you is that not just this week, but also continuing forward, use the resources that are in this room to fill that cup so that when you're bumped into and whatever spills out is something that hasn't been there before. Because we know that we wouldn't have had this problem if we already had the solutions to this adaptive problem. But we know that if we put something different in that cup, we're going to be able to be extraordinarily successful in this space. The one thing that's unique about this kind of work is that there are extremely passionate people in this room. Nobody in here does this for the money. Nobody in here does this for the fame. You want to leave it better than you found it. You're here because you want to have an impact on the world for whatever your why is. So make sure that you use this opportunity and leverage it to put something in that cup that is going to do exactly that. Leave it better than we found it. Because if we do that, then at the end of the day, what this challenge in the rearview mirror looks like was exactly that opportunity that we were looking for to have that impact. So thank you for doing this very, very important work. I hope the rest of this conference is extremely successful for you. And I look forward to having many more conversations while I am here in Tucson and in the days beyond with you about what if. Thank you.